Good evening, everyone. Look, I know it's raining. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Look, I'm going to do my best to make this speech worth getting wet for. We're going to see what happens, all right? Just walk with me here, all right? Okay. Look, thank you all for being here today. To the faculty, staff, and administration, thank you for your guidance, your belief in our potential, and thank you for those extensions on papers and projects. I definitely needed a couple of those. To the friends who have cheered us on through both the triumphs and the challenges, your love and encouragement have been a constant source of strength. To the families, we love you and we appreciate you, and we're sorry we didn't call enough, but please accept our deepest apologies along with this degree. And to the everlasting, extraordinary class of 2025, can I get a trunks up? Come on now. Look, I am deeply grateful for the privilege of addressing this student body. And if my time among you has convinced me of nothing else, it is that a great many of you could deservedly be standing here. So I will do the best I can today to honor our voices. Whether or not you've had the chance to learn about the namesake of this speech, Wendell Phillips, as we will reference, he was an epic figure for social justice, fearless and unflinching under every heading in the 19th century. And look, I'll be honest, these past 4 years have been challenging, to say the least. If you don't agree, I will just remind you that TUPD did not have emotional support dogs when we got here. Things change. In fact, a lot of things have changed since 2021. See, back in my day, we called the building on the tennis courts the mods. Now they're part of a new residence hall, the Courts at Professors Avenue. This roof didn't even have windows back then. Things change. Look, it's a tired cliche. The one constant thing about this life is that things, say it with me, change. What's more interesting and self-defining, though, is how an individual or a community responds to it. Of course, in the comforts of our own homes, churches, and workplaces, we declare our reasoned beliefs openly. We confidently list the steps of how we would respond when faced with certain crises. Still, when the ground shifts beneath you and the hypotheticals become real, something deeper comes out. You're forced to decide what kind of person you want to be, but many of those beliefs and values, for whatever reason, abandon you. We all imagine we'll rise to the occasion until the pressure hits. And when it does, it feels a lot like a stress test. A stress test is a medical exam that shows how healthy your body really is when it's under pressure. A lab assistant straps wires to your chest, presses a button, and then a treadmill starts. Slowly at first, then faster. The incline rises, your breath shortens, your muscles tighten, your heart beats faster and faster. And it's a test to reveal what doesn't show when life is easy. Look, over the past 4 years, we have been stress tested. And just as enormous pressures at high altitudes or great depths challenge the systems of spaceships and submarines, our own vascular system and all that relies upon it, most notably our minds and consciences, can fail us. This pressure, you'll remember, came at us in waves. A pandemic disrupted our lives. Mass shootings bloodied our schools and concerts. Vying political forces upended our capitals. Wildfires incinerated our towns and homes. Our own Rumaisa Ozturk was taken off of our streets by 6 masked people and kept in Louisiana for 6 weeks. We witnessed wars and humanitarian crises from Ukraine to Sudan, from Gaza to Tigray, all of which has forced us to wrestle with moral truths and what it means to value human life. And somewhere in between it all, we had to do our undergraduate duties. We had papers to write. We had code to compile, problem sets to finish. The treadmill didn't slow down. The incline didn't get easier. And yet, here we are. We rose. We showed up. We didn't just keep our heads down for the past 4 years and just study. We lived. And we made time for bingo. But the world outside this campus didn't just pause for us. The pressure never fully let up. And when pressure rises, something shifts, not in your body, but in your character. The values that hold us together, empathy, compassion, love, they begin to weaken. They're easier to ignore, very much the way familiarity with our rituals like the prayer before a meal or gestures of respect become hollow movements without meaning. Because it's easier to run away. It's easier to stay silent. Easier to tell ourselves, hey, look, it's not my fight. They're not talking about me. And bit by bit, a dangerous tolerance for dehumanization and indifference to cruelty seeps in. We justify mistreatment when it doesn't directly touch us. We reshape dignity into something conditional, something earned. Look, we believe that dignity belongs to everyone. We believe every person bears the image of God in some form or other. Everyone makes mistakes, sure. But we believe that doesn't put anyone's worth up for debate. And throughout history, there were people who refused to let the world forget that truth. We look to John Lewis, beaten and bloodied for daring to walk across a bridge in Selma, yet still choosing love over hate. We look to Ralph Bunche, the first Nobel Peace Prize winner of color who negotiated peace across borders and refused to let politics decide who deserved justice. We look to Wendell Phillips, for whom this address is named, whose family tried to have him committed because he dared to speak out against slavery, and yet he never stopped fighting for human dignity. As he said at John Brown's funeral, ours is the age of thought. Hearts are stronger than swords. Under enormous pressures, they acted on conviction, not convenience. They chose to stand up, even when the world of opinion pressured them to do otherwise. Look, Wendell Phillips asked for this 2-word inscription on his gravestone: infidel, comma, traitor. He meant by that he would rather be considered an infidel to every church that compromises with wrong and a traitor to every government that oppresses the people. Their sense of who deserved dignity was never shaped by public opinion. It came from an unshakable belief that every single human being matters. That seed of dignity planted in the age of reason inspired generations who refused to let it die. It fueled workers who stood for fair wages. It empowered women suffragists who demanded the right to vote. And it still calls to anyone who is bold enough to believe that dignity should never depend on power, privilege, or popularity. We cannot lean on convenience. We can't. We ought to operate on conviction, not just when it's easy or cheap, but when it's frightening and costly. When we choose to treat people with dignity, not because they meet our standards or share our background, but because they are human, then and only then do we begin to realize a society that is worth immortalizing. We don't have to look much further than Barnum, right behind you, to see what a mindset like this can create. The Tufts University Prison Initiative, or TUPIT, housed in the Tisch College of Civic Life, has taken a radical approach to reentry from prison. It looks at people and says, I don't care what you've been, where you've been, or who you are. You deserve the same love and respect as everyone else, not because you're perfect, but again, because you're human. By offering people who are directly impacted by the carceral system a pathway to continued higher education, TUPIT is offering degrees, but it's also offering dignity. It's unflinching in its resolve to uphold humanity with no prerequisites. Look at my lips. That is radical. For TUPIT, a prison system that focused more on locking people up than helping them grow is agitating. So they've tailored their mission, their essence, their work to deal with that agitation. This is a model for how we should approach life beyond this campus. But each of us carries a different assignment. Each of us has an issue in the world that we don't think should exist, some injustice that shakes us, stirs us, follows us, and that is where our work begins. That feeling, that fire, that's what I call your tailored agitation. Maybe it's seeing someone you love struggle with addiction and try to heal. Maybe it's stories of Black women being ignored by their medical providers. It could be the lack of tech accessibility for blind folks or climate change affecting the quality for aging populations. Look, I'm not asking you for anything in this speech other than to figure out what that is. It exists within you. It upsets you naturally. Whatever it is, let's hold on to it. Let it be the fire that drives us, the thing that pushes us to act when it's easier to look away. Look, newsflash, things change. But we don't have to stand by and hope that things change for the better. We are the change. So how will we respond? This question isn't new, and so it's only right we let Wendell Phillips have the last word for us this day. While speaking at the 1855 Dartmouth College commencement, he turned to his audience with these closing words. He believed that servility, the tendency to please others at the expense of what's right, was the great danger of the American scholar. He warned that as the politician, the press, and even the pulpit had failed in their moral duties, we must place our hope in the scholars of the country. He closed with this challenge, that the scholars should leave the height of contemplation and come down into the everyday life of the people. We can't just stay in libraries or classrooms thinking big thoughts. We've got to step down into the real life and help people. So trunks up indeed, and do go off on your far-flung ambitions to make your fortunes and your fame, but just remember, though P.T. Barnum gave us the circus, it's Phillips and the host of others who endured seismic pressures and personal sacrifice to make real lives better. They point the way. That's our compass, and we cannot avoid these responsibilities. Thank you.